It was the first time since I moved to Aiken that I felt like I was finally with people that I understood and that understood me, and
Right.
I felt at home. And Julie was a major factor in that. She just embraced me, and when we sang in the choir together, that was at Christmas time, it was just like, I'm home.
Yes.
So John,
So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll try to get the live stream going. I'm not sure what, I mean, it's, so let's go ahead and get started. So part of this idea came about because of trying to facilitate conversations within the UU community. Several years ago, I had a conversation. We were having a board meeting retreat. And so we went around the room and we sort of introduced ourselves. And part of the idea was to tell people something about ourselves that they probably didn't already know. And part of that exercise was an understanding that there were a lot of things about people that we commonly encountered that were very interesting and useful to know as background, but we never had a conversation and we never had an opportunity to know. So we found, for example, in that small group of people, that two of us had done skydiving. One guy had started a rock and roll band, and another person had started to become a Pentecostal minister. And so we went around the room and found all these interesting things about people. And so it's also sometimes we have opportunities to talk after church, but those are sort of informal conversations rather than focused conversations. And I was very happy to have the opportunity to talk to Julie. My past interactions with Julie have been somewhat conversation-based. So one in the past was about, we were doing a leadership event, and one of the topics we were thinking about was crucial conversations. And I remember talking to Julie about that at the time. It's a book, but more importantly, it's an idea about conversations in difficult circumstances. And then also I ran across Julie again in nonviolent communication. She had set up a forum for using that and exploring that within the Aiken Church. And also she had put together an event on world religions. And what I liked about that, it was very structured. There was an introductory period where the speaker could talk, and then there was conversation and questions. So when Debbie suggested her as somebody for this conversation, I thought, wow, that would be a great resource to talk to. And she also, Julie, mentioned the work that you'd done to try to keep the community together while we were in this process of social distancing. So I would like to start with maybe you sort of telling us a little bit about your background. I really am not familiar with your professional background, and so share whatever you would like to share.
I worked in hospital management for 20 some odd years in Sarasota, Florida. And my education provided a dual degree. I have a dual master's in business administration and psychotherapy, and I have a doctorate in human service administration.
It's 9:15.
Because I can get bored if I don't have enough stimulation. So in the hospital, I had the chance to do psychotherapy with patients and employees while also managing business aspects within the hospital setting. When we moved here, I assumed that I would keep working, but my health took a nosedive. I still keep my license active. I'm licensed to practice in South Carolina, but my health just does not afford me that opportunity. I've been involved with Aiken UU since 2008. I believe that's when my wife and I joined, and I stepped into managing or beginning activities that I wanted because they just weren't present. And I went to a retreat up in Highlands, North Carolina with the Augusta UU and the Aiken UU, and it was all about be the change you want to be. So I came home and said, well, I want a drum. I want to look at nonviolent communication. There were so many things that I wanted to know for myself, and the church allowed me to start exploring those through small groups.
So in this time when we're going through this period of social distancing, it sort of erodes one of the components that has been part of church, and that is community, the gathering of people, the social interaction, in addition to the formal service where you have a homily and you have music and other things that you share together. So what suggestions and what have you found that seems to work reasonably well in trying to maintain community in the face of that difficulty?
Well, I had never Zoomed before. I am not technologically connected. I need a much younger person around me to help me. And yet I realized early on, when I understood more about this virus, that we needed to proactively look at systems in order to keep our community connected. We have 6 chalice groups that meet. Normally they meet monthly. And we started meeting, all 6 chalice groups are meeting weekly right now. And they're desiring those connections. I really had not anticipated that. We started a program called Morning Sips of Connection. And it's Monday through Friday where people can just drop in, see each other's faces, talk or not talk, and then drop out. There's no expectation of programming. We've also started a sacred shared time once a week, which is primarily silence. Everyone shares their opening ritual, then a very short reading, and followed by just silence. And it usually lasts about 20 minutes. We did that for our working people so that they would have a place that they could, during lunch, connect and then get back to what they needed to do. We've done our sisterhood groups through Zoom now. Let me see, and I'm running drumming groups. I'm doing 4 drumming groups each week. And that's to keep our drum community, which is primarily our Aiken UU church community.
It's hugely popular.
Mm-hmm. So,
how do you do something like drumming with audio, or do you do it? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm fortunate that there is a drum circle e-group that shares best practices. And when all this started, these are people that make their living through running drum circles. And you can't run drum circles live now. And so people were scurrying about to try to figure out, how can they keep this important connection? How can they support their income from an indefinite period? The first time I did the drum group, it was a disaster. And yet I set up the expectation that everyone needed to just bring their sense of humor. They could bring their drum, but most importantly, they would need to bring their sense of humor because I had no idea how it would go. And then we figured out how to make it work. So everyone joins and I mute everyone. And then I normally do an opening and I'll count down. Everyone, I'm going to unmute you, and with your drums, say whatever you want to say. And I mute everyone again because it's chaos. And then we begin drumming. So the only drum they hear is my drum. And there's certain settings. David helped me, Debbie's husband, as well as some of the drummers of what settings are important in order to provide this. And we, as I say, I'm doing 4 groups. I have the luxury that I don't need to charge for this. This is purely for my enjoyment. I get to be with my drummers and we get to play together. Because I don't know when this is going to end, John. I have an idea that Liz and I can see Liz here. Normally I see her occasionally at a luncheon or occasionally at an event at the Augusta Church. But this gives me a chance to see Liz, and I feel overwhelmed that I get to see you. And we're all moving through this space. Some of us may not be able to be together again for some time safely. Zoom allows that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the ability to see somebody is a whole lot more effective than just conversation either by email, which is sort of disastrous in terms of getting across the intent,
Yes.
and also even a phone conversation where you just have voice.
Right.
We sort of rely very heavily on facial expressions and feedback.
Yeah.
Those are all things that I think are important. And I found that sometimes they can have a Zoom conversation for 3 to 5 minutes, whereas it would have been forever by email, just because I can't say, no, you don't quite understand. And we can have that interactive conversation. Now, you mentioned in an earlier conversation, and this is something that I think is true, that the Zoom meetings are not quite conversation. They don't have the informality. So if you have a Zoom meeting, you don't have the side conversations that you have in a real meeting or right afterwards where people sort of talk to each other. And so you want to comment on that?
Well, in conversation, in normal conversation, there's an exchange verbally and non-verbally, almost like that ping pong match, and it's spontaneous. You don't have that with Zoom, because if you and I tried to speak at the same time right now, we would cancel each other out and probably create some chaos. So that's a limitation, and yet it's adaptive, I think. So this may be due to all of the small groups that we have at the church. I'm used to speaking and then being silent and then having you speak and then having Deb speak. So I'm used to receiving that type of communication and I'm quite comfortable with it. But it does stop this ping pong conversation. And yet, I think it's an adaptive necessity. And it may be an adaptive necessity that we look back on in years to come that may change some of our culture somewhat due to how we're having to communicate.
Is it part of, it became natural for us in the groups because we already have a covenant for that. Is that true with all groups in all you use? No, that's unique to
No,
us.
well, there is a small group process that's recommended through UU, but all of UUs are independent. So whether or not they choose to utilize that type of small group model is completely up to the church, and also who's managing or facilitating the meeting.
It's
So
second nature to me now. So
Mhm.
can you talk about just some of the chalice groups, what they're organized around?
There is the small group ministry through the UU, and that's the website, smallgroupministry.com. I think it's com. And Reverend something another, I think it's like Zuzutsky something. She's wonderful. That's not her last name, but manages it. And there are probably 2,000 small group programs that have already been created with the chalice lighting, the check-in, the topic, questions associated with those topics, and an ending. So it's a model that's already been created by hundreds of Unitarian churches around the United States and in the world. So we started our first chalice group due to SULI, the Southern Unitarian Universalist Leadership something, E. And another member and I came back from that experience saying we needed to start a chalice group. And I think that was 9 years ago, maybe 10 years ago now. And it's been running every month ever since. And as we get new people to join the church, we've added other chalice groups. They all use the same program for the month because I see it as another type of shared experience. So they may not be in the same chalice group, but we may be talking about our own special ministry in the world, or awe, or humor. So there's a shared experience that we have within our community. We've offered this to the men of the church, no interest. So we started another program called Faith Cafe, right? Different name. We get men to join us there. And it's once a month, and we offer dinner, and it's the same group format. But there's no commitment. Where the chalice groups, there are commitments. But in Faith Cafe, there's no commitment, and there's no community service project. All of our chalice groups do at least one, usually 2 or 3 community service projects each year. So there's a framework to these.
So let me understand this. So the chalice groups have a common theme, or is it, so what differentiates the chalice groups if they have a common theme?
The people that join. So every group has the same members for each group. So one group might have 9 members and another group may only have 6 members, but they're the same people that show up each month. Just like our gathering here would be influenced if you weren't here today or if Deb wasn't here today. The group becomes its own entity. So even if we're talking about the same topic through the month, it is completely different in each group. But the topic remains the same.
So what is the typical size of the group?
We have, the minimum amount right now is 6 and the maximum is 9 members. And so what we look at, for example, in Debbie's group, the Soul Sisters, they chose their name. We have added
30.
A new woman to the group who's a new member of the church, and she just connected just that quickly. We have another group with 7 members, and their connections are very different. I wouldn't say they've connected intimately or on that shared space yet. They're still kind of dancing around safety.
So women seem pretty comfortable with the chalice groups and men don't, if I read that right.
Correct.
So
That's been our experience.
So what's the Faith Cafe? What's the difference in format there?
None, except so the difference is we eat. So we started with offering pizza, salad, and dessert and conversation. It's the exact same format, except in our chalice groups, we ask everyone to make a 1-year commitment when they join. We've only had one person leave the chalice groups in all these years. after they make that decision to join, it seems like they find their tribe and they're happy to stay and stay connected. So there's no commitment with Faith Cafe. It still meets an hour and a half. My commitment to the groups is we start on time and we end on time, because that's predictability. And I think
I agree.
people appreciate that. Same format, no interruption. We have a covenant and the opening, a topic, readings, and a closing. So the only real difference is no commitment. You don't have to come every month. We eat, and that's it. That's the only difference. Don't tell the men of our congregation, please.
Yeah, I think men have a little bit more difficulty with casual conversation sometimes than women do. That's part of probably our upbringing.
Mhm.
I think so with using Zoom, have you used Zoom to meet with the chalice groups and the Faith Cafe? Have you just substituted that?
Mhm. Yeah. I counted for this meeting today. I'm doing 21 Zooms a week.
Wow.
That's a little. It's important, and we're still trying to understand the financial cost for the church, and making a commitment to Zoom. So I am running Zoom just on my bank account. My Zoom account is through my bank account. Doesn't matter to me. But the church is going to need to decide whether or not they want to purchase the larger program that Zoom offers, because that would allow multiple facilitators and people that can come in and schedule. Right now, I'm the only one that can schedule on this account.
Right.
So I'm looking at not being here for some time and trying to figure out during my absence how to make sure these connections continue. And so we're in conversations about that now. I also think that Liz may not feel this way, but I know Liz lives far away from the church. You have to drive in.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's nighttime meetings that you say, I'm not doing that drive. It's too late. It's too dark. I don't like driving at night. So I think I think Zoom may be with us now, because we've had a taste of not adding fossil fuels to our world. We've had a taste of what it means to not worry driving at night and still finding a way to connect. So I think personally, I think we need to be thinking broadly about how to make sure people that want to stay connected have a means to do that. And I think it's through Zoom currently.
We've also had some people who have church members who have moved away have come back have on to Zoom.
Like me.
Yeah,
This is April Wilson. Hello, Augusta friends.
Yay,
Hi,
April!
April. How are you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing okay. Do you, I don't see a video. Do you have any video?
I do, but I don't, because
Okay.
the time snuck up on me.
Okay. Well, it's good to hear your voice again.
Yeah, you too.
We're doing okay. I suppose the church is doing okay. So
Yeah.
glad to make connection with you again.
Yeah, it's great. I'm excited to be doing things with you guys again a little bit.
One of the things we've noticed in our little meditation group, which we're doing by Zoom, and is that we've had people join us from, say, Australia.
Oh, wow.
So there is an opportunity to bring in other people from other parts of the country. And we're also putting together an interfaith discussion, panel discussion at the end of the month. And it's basically based on Barbara Brown Taylor's book, Holy Envy. And what was interesting is that we're going to do it by Zoom, is that people who are actually dispersed in different parts of the country are willing to join in that conversation because they don't have to be at a specific place at a specific time. Julie, have you had opportunity to sort of bring in guests from sort of abroad to meetings that otherwise you wouldn't be able to contact?
Well, we thank you for that information, Deb, for the book. We've not outreached currently that I know of, except in contacting our beloved previous president and her husband, Madeline and Mickey Marshall. And they were able to join us for Faith Cafe, which was just precious to be able to see them. They're in Maryland now. Our current offerings would not necessarily lend themselves to that type of offering. And yet, I don't know what this next week brings for what may be desired for adding. I can tell you that from my drumming group, one of the drummers was in his village in Africa, and he was able to connect through Zoom and share his village and his family and some drumming, which still just shakes my heart to have had that experience with him. He's such a great man. So that's the only experience that I've had so far.
Yeah, I think maybe the future for things like that might be something of a hybrid where you have people meeting in person, but a Zoom connection for people who want to join remotely. So that's one alternative I'm exploring, is this. Now, Zoom has a venue for that, but it's very expensive, and I don't think it's the best venue for that because it still requires a lot of, in addition to being expensive, it still requires a lot of technical setup. But there are a couple other options that I'm looking forward to. Even in this, see, one of the things about trying to do conversations this way, and maybe we're better off in a different format, but the idea was to explore whether this was a means of sort of conversing between the Aiken and Augusta communities, because again, distance gets in the way. So if you have an event one place and the other people have to travel, and it's worth doing for a special event, but it means that you can't do it on a frequent basis.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it would require a very specific type of programming. So if David were to offer a concert, which he was scheduled to do one for us in April, and we had to postpone it, that would be lovely to be able to offer to the Augusta UU. But the technology that would be needed to have a live streaming event is not going to be able to, I don't think, be able to be done through Zoom. I think you would need another technology to allow that live streaming. And then again,
I think you're right. I think the bandwidth and particularly the audio bandwidth for Zoom is pretty limited. On Skype, it's a little bit better, but I think you have to go to something probably like YouTube with high definition audio to accomplish that. They allow you to do chat on a live stream, but there's not really, other than chat, there's really no way to interact that I'm aware of after the event. So you lose a little bit of that, and it becomes more of a performance rather than
Right.
a gathering of people. So yeah, it's the technology is sort of there, but it's not there in the way that would allow, I think, people to connect as much as they'd like. So,
well, I've been doing some concerts with people that I love on different nights of the week. Susan Werner is one of my favorite musicians, and she's doing a live Facebook concert every, I think it's Saturday night for an hour. And she runs a chat bar underneath. So, in a very weird way, John, I am connecting with people that I haven't spoken to in 20 years because we've been groupies for her for a very long time. And then she, as she's performing, and her audio is spectacular. It's as if she's sitting right in front of me. And last week she invited Dar Williams. Dar Williams is another one of my favorite folk singers. So here were these two brilliant performers live, connecting through that chat stream. And I was connecting with the people that were chatting through chat streaming while they were listening to this incredible musician. I would never have expected to have that experience because I don't like technology. I don't like computers. I don't like screen time. And here I was captivated by these friends that I hadn't seen and these two brilliant musicians. So things are a changing.
Yeah, and it won't be long before we're integrating virtual reality into this as well. So that'll allow for some of the ping pong discussions and a theater in the round kind of.
yeah, I like the performance idea. That would be something interesting to try, get some experience with. I mean, I think the technology involved is pretty low cost. And certainly you can stream either on Facebook or YouTube without incurring a lot of cost. So that might be interesting. Maybe chat has more possibility than, and it's just because I don't use it very often. Maybe that's
Right.
that's a problem.
Well, it's the idea of necessity now. I've never been on Facebook before until now. My wife is doing a lot of this programming where she's working in Maryland. And there was a piece of information that she shared with me, which I thought I would share with you. For every 20 minutes that you're looking at this screen, you need to raise your eyes and look outside or look ahead away from the screen for about 20 seconds because they're measuring some of our brain activity through being so focused here on this computer screen that they're concerned. There is some concern that we are now spending much more time doing this, and it actually is changing some of the brain chemicals and neuropathways. So for every 20 minutes on the screen, look up and look out.
I
And
like to put something on the ceiling,
so I've
a
been
motto
trying.
or something.
I remember it was a 20-minute on screen time, but I don't remember how long I need to keep my eyes up and out away from the screen to then be able to come back. Deb, you probably will be able to find information about that too from the work that you're doing.
Well, let's see where we are. We're about 9:45. So I would like to know if other people, April or Liz or Debbie, any of you would like to ask your own set of questions.
I've been hearing. Hey, this is April. I'll turn on the video. I got this.
Hi, April.
Hi,
Hey,
April.
hi guys. We hear all the time about people getting Zoom bombed and all that stuff. What's the magic trick to keeping that secure?
The only magic that I know, April, is making sure that you don't have a public access to your Zoom link. So I don't publicize our Zoom link at all, only I invite those groups independently. So if I have a group on Monday, I have a Zoom link just for them for that Monday. But if it's publicized on a public forum, it's really awful. We had some drum circles early on, and they're family friendly, and some of these folks were really traumatized by some of the images that were
Oh my gosh.
done. So, but they didn't know that. They were posting it on their website. Join us. Here's the Zoom link. And so the people that took advantage.
Did they do it by screen sharing or their video stream, or how did they do it?
John, I don't know, but they were called porn bombs. These kids saw things that no one should be seeing,
I see.
you know? And so these are people that have all the time that they need to do tragic acting out somehow. And so
So what I've tried to do is that you can limit people from screen sharing, and that's one way. If you don't, people can throw up whatever is on their computer, and everybody sees it. So that's one thing I either try to very, very strictly limit. Usually only the host can screen share, and that seems to help a little bit. The other thing is to basically mute people when there's somebody else talking, so that they can't interject and seize the forum by whatever happens they happen to put on their video screen or whatever they happen to come up with. So far I've not had a lot of problems. So we're going to try this seminar, which I hope a lot of people attend at the end of the year, and I've upgraded my account to the seminar status. And what that does is it allows you to focus the attention on a panel of people. So you can say you're a panelist, and so you can share your sound and video. Everybody else is muted unless you unmute them. And you can also control the view that people see. So you can say you can only see the panelist, or you can only see what the host is sharing, so that nobody has the opportunity to seize the screen in terms of that. But that requires an upgrade to the normal Zoom account. But I'm hoping that that will be adequate, because we're sort of balancing. We want a public link so that people will come. The other thing we're trying, and it may not work, is that we're trying registration. It's very simple. It's sort of like Eventbrite, but you can click on the link to get and the problem, the reservation I have about that is I'm concerned that people are so used to joining in Zoom meeting just by having instant information that may be a deterrent. I don't know. We'll have to see what the results are.
I have a feeling now that online education is growing exponentially. And in some of the training that I've gotten, I teach children in Beijing English, English ESL, and Eventbrite was used all the way through my training, where you register for a class, and then at the time it comes up and reminds you of it, and you simply press a link, and at that time it traps your information so that you can get back to that person or give them credit for having attended, and it's pretty seamless.
Did you do it in integration with Zoom?
Yeah. Oh, yes. It was all done on Zoom.
Okay. I'll look at that. Maybe I can add that as a route.
I'm sorry.
Well, our minister and I had a Russell type of conversation because I told her that I'm opening up each of my meetings without having to accept each person as they come in. And she said, so you're taking a risk that you're going to injure people that are here. And I explained my idea about not sharing the link, where with church, she's actually having to see, oh, there's Julie's name. Yes, she can come in. There's Deb, which I think is very, I think it's a challenge, but it's a way to, I know that she feels strongly as I do, that it's another level of trying to protect folks that join thinking that it's a safe place. So
Right. That's how Meetup works. Has anybody ever used a Meetup?
I have.
So you tag yourself with things that you're up to 10 things that you're interested in, and then they send you announcements for activities like that are going on around. But and this is an option, but when somebody responds to want to go to your activity, they you can give them a secret code for unique to that activity, and when they come, it gives you a way of knowing that how they came to you through Meetup, essentially. But so that's another way.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I have a question. Now, I know, John, that you are concerned about not making this public, but public is what? What is public? Because a church has an ongoing list of people who attend, members and non-members, interested parties. And if they are on our database, is that the general public? Because, so my question is, oh, it's not the general public. Okay, so my question is, why can't we send out an announcement to that mailing list with the link for the upcoming program?
I'll let Julie and others comment on it. I really am very reluctant to send email blast to somebody that hasn't really asked for the information. So typically, so that's my concern. It's just that there's so much
Spam.
unsolicited information that comes in my email account. I didn't want this to be recognized as another source. And so it's that balance. And I don't know if it's the right balance or not.
yeah, I don't have the answer. We send out a weekly e-blast for members and friends of our church. So let's say it goes out to 250 people. We include the link for church. I don't know I think there's a potential for a problem. And it may just be my suspicion about technology. I don't know enough that
Like a security problem, Julie?
mhm.
I
I
see.
can just tell you what my drummer friends told me. And there were multiple people that were porn bombed. And these are multiple drum circles. They were traumatized by the event. And these were smart, techie young people. And they have really had to tighten up how they advertise their programs because of these really horrible experiences. And I'm not smart enough to say how trolls or, I don't know, goblins, I don't know how they did it, but they really wrecked some harm.
Hmm.
So the discussion was making sure that any link is a closed link versus a public link in order to protect that. But there might be other standards being used that I'm just not aware of now.
My understanding is that there's two ways to enter. One is through a link that you receive through email, and the other is by signing onto your own application and entering a unique number that comes to you in the email,
Mhm.
and that is the most secure method. Am I right on that?
So Zoom has the opportunity to allow people to register. And if you have a meeting and you register, you give them their email and your name, and then I believe that sends you a link, or it provides a link on the screen when you've done that. So I've thought about that. We're going to try it with this event that we're having later in the month. I'm just concerned that people are so used to dropping in on a Zoom meeting that they'll conceive of that as a hurdle. But it may be necessary to sort of, in a public forum, we're going to do it, because if people aren't willing to provide an email and get a legitimate email, then that's probably not a healthy sign. Maybe not the people you want in your audience. So
Right.
Our book club normally eats dinner together at a restaurant as we discuss our book, but we haven't been able to do that. So finally we went on Zoom to have our book discussion. That was last month, and it went well. It was really fun to see each other and be able to actually comment on the book that we had been reading. And I guess we're going to do that again this month. So we are reading Emma by Jane Austen, and we're going to discuss it on Thursday at 7. Let's see, that's Thursday the 28th at 7 o'clock.
And Liz, that's a perfect example of how I think our churches could connect through Zoom, offering the book if you knew ahead of time which book, and then entering into that forum. We have a journaling group and a book club also that has been meeting through Zoom, and they're doing it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm a slow reader, so I only manage one book a month.
well, we have a small book club, and we've also been doing that. One thing that's nice about Zoom is that one of our members just recently moved to Maryland, but she's still part of the group. So that's sort of a unique connection. Before, when somebody left the area physically, they were gone. We lost connection except for email. So I don't know where we're going to. The other thing that was useful is occasionally we wanted to watch a video together.
It's 10 o'clock.
Share our comments about that, and that was a way to do that. Okay, it's 10 o'clock, and we're going to end this meeting. I want to thank Julie for sharing her thoughts. Thank you very much. Very useful. A lot of insights and a lot of
It's lovely
ideas.
to see everyone.
So
Hi,
thank you.
sweetheart.
Oh,
Hi. Oh.
That's
Good to see you,
Henry.
April.
Hi, darling.
he's
Say hi,
darling.
everybody.
Well, be well, everyone.
Yeah,
Okay.
you too. Okay.
Thank you guys for doing this.